Hi, this is Wayne Bergeron, and you're listening to Triple Threat.
That's perfect.
And welcome once again to another episode of Triple Threat, the all-talk, no-music show online where we talk about the Beatles, The Who, Pink Floyd, and other assorted stuff. And when I say we, that is us being our three hosts this time around, and joining me is the Richard Wright fan, Becca Cristino.
Hello.
Got to get that out of the way.
This is going to be a Pink Floyd episode. I need to just have it's like when you watch documentaries and have like titles underneath stating people's professions. It's Richard Wright enthusiast in the subtitles beneath my name.
Yeah, we had to get that out already. And
doctor or something actually impressive. I like the band member that nobody else cares about.
yeah. Also joining me is the David Gilmour enthusiast, Garrett Hicks.
I don't know about that, but hi.
You've called him the greatest guitarist, so.
Well, yeah, he is.
Yeah. and then there's me. I'm Tom Brutia, the Ron Geeson fan, and I'm not just saying that because we did an interview with him and he likes the show. Little shout out, Ron, if you're listening. Hello. And
thank you for mulling over my name for several minutes. It made my life.
and if you haven't caught on, this week's is Pink Floyd week, and we're talking about an exciting topic.
Sorry.
And it's an exciting topic. It's the 9th, 10th, or 11th album, depending on how you count them. We're talking about the album "Wish You Were Here."
What do you mean, depending on how you count them? I've never heard that one.
Well,
Depends on if you count the soundtracks.
if you count,
as albums.
yeah, thank you. If you don't count
okay.
if you don't count the soundtracks, which some people don't.
Count the soundtracks. They're good.
Yeah.
Mostly.
We'll get to those. Let's get back to "Wish You Were Here," released September 1975. This was the only Pink Floyd album to hit number one in both the US and the UK. It was also their last number one album in the UK. So, of course, we're going to talk about this album, but this is a unique album for us because we're also going to talk about the bonus stuff that has come out in 2011, and with the help of Becca, who has the very lovely, very big, and very expensive Immersion box set.
I have no more money.
And we're going to be reviewing that, and also as well as the album. So, kind of check in on the album itself. Becca, what do you think of this album?
I love it. I absolutely love it. It's probably my second favorite Pink Floyd album. It's up there. It's top 5, absolutely. And of all time, of course, definitely somewhere in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. And what about you, Garrett?
How do I say this? This one is often switching out with The Division Bell as my favorite album. My favorite Pink Floyd album, anyway. Often, it has come up as my favorite album ever, occasionally.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And
It is fantastic.
Oh, something today together.
And for me, this actually was for a long time my favorite album. I was trying to be a hipster and say, "Oh, Wish You Were Here" is so much better than Dark Side of the Moon or all this stuff. And actually, for a long time, Wish You Were Here was my go-to album. But it's changed over time. I do like it a lot. It's definitely in my top 5 as well. Might even be my second favorite, next to Dark Side of the Moon, actually. So I'm excited to talk about this. Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about this one. So, actually, before we get into it, we're talking off mic, and Garrett has volunteered to give us a little backstory between what happened to this album and how it came to be. So, Garrett, please take it away.
Okay, so the year is 1974. Pink Floyd is touring their smash hit "Dark Side of the Moon," and they're actually now significantly famous on both sides of the Atlantic. Then this sort of gets them thinking, especially Roger Waters, the bassist and lead lyricist of Pink Floyd at this time, about the nature of their fame and success. And he, along with the other guys in the band, realized they could not have possibly gotten this far if not for one Syd Barrett, who, if you don't know, Syd Barrett was one of the founding members of Pink Floyd. He was only ever in the first two albums, most significantly in The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, their first album, and he also collaborated with them on Saucerful of Secrets, their second album, before he left in 1968. Because of creative differences, you might say. Also, you might say that he just plain went insane. He overdosed on acid at one point, and he survived. He's okay. He was okay.
Well, he's not okay now.
No. Well, no, he died in 2006.
But that was cancer. That was different.
Yeah. Anyway, so Syd went on to make a couple of studio albums in 69 and 70 before retiring from the music business altogether and becoming a recluse in Cambridge. So even today, the members of Pink Floyd highly regard Syd as a creative force who totally changed their lives and someone who, at least indirectly, probably more directly, I would say, changed the face of pop music as we know it. So anyway, they're on this tour in 1974, and on rehearsals and stuff, they're just making some odd music, seeing what they could possibly, come up with for their next project. At that point, they were thinking, maybe we'll just take a lot of stuff from around the house and make music with that, and that became the Household Music. Was it? Household Object Project. That was eventually dropped. Although you can still hear a couple of songs from it. We'll talk about Wine Glasses, and then there was The Hard Way on the Immersion Dark Side of the Moon set, which was played on, I think, bottles and rubber bands.
Yeah, a whole bunch of weird stuff like that.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. It probably would not have made a very successful album.
It's a little sonic noodling to listen to occasionally. It's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah. So.
Doesn't sound bad either.
And so while they're noodling around between gigs, they come up with a couple of songs. Some of them made their way into the Animals album in 1977. Some of them became Wish You Were Here songs. One of them in particular was the first song, Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which happened almost entirely accidentally when Gilmour was trying to finger an A chord probably and got it a bit wrong, and so 4 notes fell out of his guitar. We'll talk about that later. So begins the process of making the album that would eventually become Wish You Were Here. They write Shine On You Crazy Diamond and Have a Cigar, Welcome to the Machine, Wish You Were Here, the title track, and also these others, Raving and Drooling, You've Got to Be Crazy, which they considered putting on this album, but eventually shelved until the next one. During the process of recording Shine On You Crazy Diamond, which was lyrically and thematically inspired by Syd Barrett, a bit of a strange occurrence occurred. Syd Barrett actually visited the studio while the band was recording Wish You Were Here. Nick Mason is not entirely certain in his biography what song they were listening to when Barrett visited, but a lot of sources cite Shine On You Crazy Diamond. If you've seen pictures of Syd Barrett,
Oh my God.
you would be surprised at the transformation that had happened. He originally was a thin man, very good looking, dark, thick, curly hair, just sort of this twinkle in his eye, bouncing around all the time. In fact, the day we're recording this, I've been seeing pictures on Facebook of him with Pink Floyd because today, Saturday, February the 1st, is the anniversary of when Pink Floyd was signed to EMI.
Well, that's a coincidence.
Yeah, right?
Oh, okay.
I didn't even know that.
No, I showed it on Facebook too.
And so you see this dynamic individual here. And then in 1975, only 8 years after founding Pink Floyd, Syd Barrett shows up. His head is shaved, his eyebrows are shaved, and he's gained several pounds. He's actually overweight at this time. He wanders into the studio just wearing a polo shirt and pants, nothing special like he would wear with Pink Floyd in the 67, the age of psychedelia. And he comes in and just sits there. The other 4 band members have no idea who he is. No idea. So someone goes up to him and start talking like, "What, can we help you, sir? What are you doing here?" And he says, "I'm here to play the guitar. That's what I do, right?" Eventually, someone recognized him and like, "Oh my God, it's Sid." Roger Waters was reduced to tears. They played one of the songs again, including probably "Wish You Were Here." And all Sid said was, "They sound a bit old," whatever that meant to him.
Who knows what that meant to him?
Yeah. I mean, acid, when you go off it, as much as Sid had done, it's a very strange place that it takes you, and oftentimes, like with Sid, you can't fully come back.
Didn't Roger say something like, when Sid said, "I'm here to play guitar," didn't Roger say something like, "It's already done"?
Yeah. Someone said that. Someone said, "Yeah, Sid, sorry, man, but we've already overdubbed all the guitar parts in this song." He just goes, "Okay." They mention in other interviews that at one point Sid tried to brush his teeth by holding the toothbrush firmly in place and jumping up and down.
Oh no!
As if this were entirely normal. Very, very strange.
And also,
and pitiful, honestly.
Also, and you're probably gonna get to this, but didn't he say one of the last things he ever said was, "I have a big fridge with pork chops in it," or something weird like that?
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah, so he was really messed up.
Yeah, and that night they invited Sid to come to David Gilmour's a party that he was throwing because he had just been married. They said, "Why don't you come along, Sid?" He said, "Okay." And sometime during the party, he just slipped out without saying goodbye, and that was the last any of the members of Pink Floyd had ever seen of him.
Yeah, and he definitely had an overshadow on this album, even though you just said he was really there for like towards the end of it. But it is kind of interesting that it's mostly about him, and he shows up at the tail end of it. But of course, we're gonna get to all of that.
It goes along with a lot of people say the theme of "Wish You Were Here" is a theme of absence, something missing, and that's people. That's something in your career, in your spiritual, your personal life. There's something missing, and a lot of your life is the search for whatever it is that's missing. This is just commenting on that, which is why it's one of the most brilliant things I've ever listened to.
Hey guys, it's Tom. Just a reminder that if you like what you hear on Triple Threat and you want to be notified when new episodes come out, then be sure to click that big red subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We upload at least one episode a month, so be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Okay, back to the show.
I guess with that said, let's go track by track. If you guys are ready to do so, we will dive right in, just like the diver on the inner sleeve of the album. And we'll appropriately begin with track 1, "Shine on You Crazy Diamond," parts 1 through 5. And since this is a 13-minute suite, we've decided that we're going to kind of go part by part. Even though it hasn't legitimately been laid out for us where each part begins, we have a Wikipedia source of all things to tell us when it begins.
Everything your teachers tell you not to do, we're about to do it.
Yes. So let's begin. "Shine On" part 1 opens with a very haunting wine glass G minor organ sound from one Richard Wright. There you go, Becca. First thing off the bat. It's I will say it's a really, really haunting sound, and Gilmour's guitar is really sweeping over it. You almost kind of forget that it's this one big drawn out chord. So Garrett, what do you think?
This is one of my favorite parts of the album already. I especially, for one thing, it's great to hear the Moog solos and stuff. I think that's a Moog. Let me look that real quick. Yes, Mini Moog.
Yep, there you go.
By Rick Wright. It's just so gorgeous, and it sounds kind of like a French horn, but kind of not. just masterfully done. There's such raw emotion in all of this part. And then Gilmour comes in pretty seamlessly on his strat with just this beautiful solo that sounds like every note is crafted perfectly and just picked out to have just the right emotional effect. And this is especially prominent, noticeable in probably my favorite performance of Shine On, which is the live in Gdansk version, which takes out a lot of the synthesizers and just has wine glasses being played live on stage, and then the Moog solo and the guitar solos played over the wine glasses. It's amazing.
Can I interrupt for just 1 second?
Please.
We're talking about Gilmour's solo in there, and that is probably my favorite, my first favorite part of the song is when he comes in with just that first guitar note, that little bit of a sounds like a slide. It's so.
I think it's more of a bend.
More of a bend, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It probably is. I mean, I'm not a electric guitar person, but I just love that pure sound of it. It almost sounds like the guitar is right in tune, like with that chord. It's so beautiful. I had that written in my notes, so I had to say that before I forgot. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to say it.
Yeah, it's totally. I had nothing else to say, man. This is just fantastic. Especially, also, actually, there's one more thing to say. It's interesting that at about 2.5 minutes into the first song, it's been the same chord, and then in the middle of the guitar solo, it changes the chord, and you go, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, dude.
It reminds me of, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact performance, but there's a performance where Gilmour is performing the intro solely on acoustic guitar, and he plays the first chord, but he holds a pedal so that it sustains while he solos over it. And when he changes the chord, that's when the audience knows what song it is.
Yeah.
I forget what performance it is, but it's on YouTube if anybody wants to find it.
I believe that was the David Gilmour in concert performance at the Meltdown.
Mm-hmm.
The Meltdown performance.
It could be. I don't have anything in front of me.
He also did that trick in the beginning of the On an Island tour, and then changed to the wine glasses somewhere in Europe when he found a guy who had actually played on.
Yeah, they found a guy in the streets.
They found a guy who played on what's called a glass organ, which is just a bunch of wine glasses kind of turning, and he just has to wet his hand and just sort of play it. Just lay his hands very lightly over it to make this beautiful, beautiful sound.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember that it was a useful source of things.
Yeah.
Actually, Becca, what do you think of this first 2 minutes of the song?
I think we've pretty much covered everything that I would plan on saying in a much more articulate way than I would plan on saying it.
Well, then,
Other than Rick White.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It captures that mystery.
Yeah.
And it gets the right weird sort of emotion to prepare for that whole song and the whole subject matter.
Yeah. You can already tell, listening to these first 2.5 minutes, that this isn't going to be a really light journey, a really lighthearted thing to be doing.
It reminds me of something that I thought of recently, that this is the first album. This is the album after Dark Side of the Moon. You think about Dark Side of the Moon, about how it ends on Eclipse, and how it's big, it's grandiose, it's almost operatic in a way. And then Wish You Were Here opens with just that sound, and it's very, very contrasting. It's not like Dark Side Part 2.
Yeah.
In a way, I just love the way that it opens. And
that's one of the things that they tried to do with Wish You Were Here, is to not make it Dark Side of the Moon.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was their problem, is that Dark Side of the Moon exploded, and while they were happy riding on the coattails of its fame, at one point they had to realize, how are we going to stay relevant and make something
else?
Yeah. So overall, great opener.
Back they did.
Yeah, I would agree. So overall, opener for Part 1 of Shine On is just brilliant. Part 2 opens with the 4 notes that Garrett was talking about that sort of just fell out of David's guitar. That was a good way of phrasing that.
I think that comes to mind. Just positively bone chilling.
Mm-hmm. I know that both you, Becca, and you, Garrett, have often told me that those notes, really just like tug on your heartstrings, so to speak.
They send the purest shiver down your spine.
Oh yeah, totally.
Every single time.
And a lot of that is, a lot of it's the production, the way that it was recorded, where Gilmour went into a studio at EMI that was normally used for orchestras. So it was this huge live room with just a couple of carpets in there to regulate the acoustics. And he's just standing there, this one little guitarist with a couple of amps and a microphone, and he just placed 4 notes that echoed throughout the entire room.
4 crystalline notes that just bounce off of.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really something, and imagine how it must have felt for Roger hearing those notes and just all this, like these images and all these thoughts of Sid's is kind of just pouring back into his mind.
Yeah, he's mentioned in interviews that he was just sitting across the room from David, and he was making this weird chord thing happen, and he plays these 4 notes, and Roger looks up. Gilmour sees that he might have gotten something, plays them again. Waters walks right over and says, "We need to make a song with that."
It's something that I wish. It's one of those things where you wish you were there. No pun intended, but
Yeah.
for that thing. Yeah. Yes, thank you. And then part 2 also includes more guitar work from Gilmour, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, this is where the rest of the band enters, with the drums and the bass and the organ and everything. This is where it kicks off.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned, I have to say this, you mentioned the drums, and we've often talked about how Nick Mason's not exactly the greatest drummer in rock and roll, but for a song like this where it's a simple kind of like a 6/8 3/4 waltz, you really don't need to be complicated. I love the way he comes in and kind of just like he just lets the song kind of flow with his drumming.
He's the perfect drummer for Pink Floyd.
Totally.
Yeah.
What they are is exactly what they need.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He really. You listen to the song and you listen to the drums on it in particular, especially right here where they come in, and you can't really imagine this song, the drums in the song, sounding any other way.
No, because it builds to that first cymbal crash, so you have to have the drum. You have to have the drums like that.
Yeah, it's just how it is.
So disgustingly over the top.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be. And then what else does part 2 have in it?
The second solo by Gilmour.
It's good.
Which of course is fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. It's not my favorite solo in the whole suite, but I'll get to that. But it is very good. So that's part 2 of Shining Crazed Diamond. Part 3 is that the organ solo?
It begins with another Moog solo.
Yeah, that's the Moog solo, which is again, I hate to repeat myself, but it's just beautifully done. I love the way that comes in there too. I know Becca's probably going to pour about Rick Wright playing that and how awesome it sounds. So I'll.
So well done. So well done. Bravo. Good job. A+. This song is so good.
Indeed.
I'm sorry. I'm busy playing with the marbles from the box set. So if you hear a bunch of thuds, that's just me being a fool.
Garrett, what do you Rick's Moog solo? How about it?
You could definitely see it's played on the same instrument as the opening solo.
It's like coming back in, really.
Yeah, it's a return to form. Another theme that'll reoccur later as well.
Yeah, it brings everything back together.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's played excellently.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, some of the live versions of this solo kind of suck.
Yeah.
Especially for whatever reason, using the terrible, terrible sound he used in the 80s tours.
You don't talk about the 80s.
Oh, come on. It was okay.
But yeah, but it wasn't 75.
Yeah.
Sound.
It's different sizes?
Also, that part has the guitar solo that I was talking about. That's probably my favorite guitar solo in that first, like, parts 1 through 5, where when the guitar solo kind of screams at you a little bit. It's more vicious than the first one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep.
That's what I like about it. It's almost like I hate to say it, but when you do tribute songs to people who are lost, you can either do it really subtle or you can do it really loud, and I like how there's two contrasting solos in the whole suite. So
Like the whole emotional spectrum of missing someone, it's all, or someone or something, oh, this is missing, this is gone. I'm so upset that this is gone, but it's just gone.
Yeah. And what I really like about the solos in this first set of parts, the first one you hear when it's just in part one, it sounds like it's weeping.
Yes.
Mhm.
It actually sounds like it's crying.
yeah.
This third one sounds like a different type of crying, something that you would probably more associate with a temper tantrum.
That's a good way to phrase it.
Oh, this was taken away from me. Why was this taken away from me?
Yeah, I don't
this
like that it
crying,
was taken.
The rest is why crying.
It would be the equivalent of taking a huge stone and throwing it in the river.
Yeah,
Yeah, it goes from a single tear poetically being shed to like the ugly crying.
yeah. And this is especially effective in live performances. I've heard a bootleg on the Animals tour in '77 where they played "Wish You Were Here" as the second set. The ad gets distortion to the solo. It becomes even more intense and even more violent.
Part 4 opens with the vocals, the first lyrics of the songs, right?
Yeah, this is 8 minutes into the song.
Yeah.
You could have played, "Won't Get Fooled Again" by The Who, and then the vocals come in.
Pretty much. I mean, I always forget that it's that long, but it's almost, when the vocals come in, you're ready to, if you're a Floyd fan, you're ready to sing along with it, or you're ready to finally hear something, what they're actually, trying to say in this song.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it must have been like hearing this when it first came out. You listen to this, it's 8.5 minutes in, like, I guess this really, really long song is going to be an instrumental the whole way. That, lyrics.
Surprise.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about at least this first set, is that it contains a lot of things that just jar you. Most particularly, the changes in the chord at the beginning, as I mentioned, and then the lyrics coming in 8.5 minutes in.
And I know that when it comes to the lyrics, I know that especially you, Garrett, you said that you have a strong connection with those first few couple of lines. Remember when you were young and you shone like the sun. Now there's a look in your eyes like black holes in the skies.
Yeah, it's very much directly talking about Sid.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about that, about the line "black holes in the sky" in your eyes, and we've had those conversations where people would look at Sid and be like, the lights were on, but nobody was home.
Yeah,
Which was again talked about in The Wall.
Yeah, and I've always liked I'm looking through the lyrics right now, and there's so much.
Well, I have a booklet to do that in here. I should probably take that out.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they reference Sid very much directly in the line, "Come on, you painter, you piper," referring to the piper at the gates of dawn,
Yeah.
and you prisoner in shine.
Mm-hmm. It's also very, when we didn't even talk about this, the whole line or the whole title of "Shine On You, Crazy Diamond,"
Oh yeah,
about how if you take every other word, it spells SYD. Ooh,
I
so
wonder who that is. That's Sid.
yeah, so that's kind of funky, but yeah, that was probably intentional. But
It was totally intentional.
yeah, but I've said this before, but think about the idea of a crazy diamond. A diamond, like you said, is somebody who shines. You shone like the sun, but he's crazy. So it's almost like he's a genius, but there's something wrong with him. So that whole image of crazy diamond, I've always loved. When I first heard that title, I didn't know it was about Sid, so I just was like, and what does that title mean? But I love it. I think I've said enough about the lyrics about this part. Anybody else have anything else to add about it?
I have to say, I don't really like Roger Waters singing this song.
Really?
No, I prefer Gilmore's versions of it, hands down, every time.
I think we've all said that Gilmore most of the time has a better singing voice overall, but I think
The album version it fits, and for it makes sense for Roger to sing this song.
That's what I was
Makes
gonna
sense.
say. It makes
does.
sense for him to sing it.
I listen to it because it's part of the album and it's part of the studio version. But 9 times out of 10, I'll take a live version with Gilmore singing it. But this one is just fine how it is.
Yes, and I would agree. And so finally, to wrap up this incredibly long conversation about an incredibly long song is part...
There you go.
Yeah, that's the way we talk, folks. Part 5 is the ending coda with a brilliant sax solo by Dick Perry.
2 sax solos, Tom.
Oh, 2 sax. Well, sometimes I consider them as one, but you're right. There are 2 solos, and this is the first real time. I mean, not the first real time because he did that like in Money and Us and Them, but this is probably arguably my favorite Dick Perry sax solo. But that's just me being, I just love the way he just sounds all the time, especially with this song. And the way that it kind of fades out, and it's kind of almost mystical, and it fades into the wind. And you know what? I'm going to stop talking because I'm getting really philosophical here right now. So
It's alright, man. Don't worry.
So Garrett, thoughts on part 5?
Okay. First off, this again goes with the jarring thing that the song does so well. You hear the vocals and everything, and then bam, saxophones. Oh, okay. Yeah. And it starts with a baritone saxophone, which is gigantic, by the way, if you've never seen one. And, it's beautiful, it's fantastic. I know a guy who plays baritone, is majoring, I think, in music. And so he plays baritone saxophone. He loves this first half of the sax solos. In the middle of the song, Perry switches to a tenor saxophone. He does this live.
Like
by the way.
he'll switch saxophones live.
Yeah. He's got a tenor saxophone, which is not quite as big as a baritone, but still, it's a saxophone. It's kind of big, hanging off his shoulder. In the middle of the concert, he tucks the berry behind his back, pulls the tenor out, and just lays out on it. And I immediately go, "You, sir, are a motherfucking boss."
Mm-hmm. And imagine having to carry that baritone saxophone on your back while you do the solo.
Oh, jeez.
I know.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Becca, any thoughts on Dick Perry's solo at the end?
Yeah.
I kind of knew you'd say that.
That's all that can be said, really. It's just, it just feels right.
Mm-hmm. It's also kind of reminiscent of the 2 guitar solos. One is very, kind of quiet and deep, and the other one is a bit louder and a bit more vicious. And so is this one to an extent. You have the 2. You have 2 contrasting solos in there. I actually thought of that like last night while I was listening to it, and because I often forget there's 2 different solos because the sound of a saxophone is very. I often just combine the 2, but it's great that there's 2 contrasting guitar solos, and they probably had Dick in the studio who was doing one solo, and they probably thought, you know what, it'd be rude not to give him a second one, so let's go ahead and do that.
Oh,
Yeah. Especially,
really long. We only want you to play for like 2 seconds.
I especially love how at the end, once the song kind of resolves itself and starts fading away, he just improvs. All of the rest of it just goes nuts. And you know what's something else? I gotta say, I love Dick Perry so much as a saxophonist. I've listened to all the Pink Floyd live things and everything. He never plays the same solo, ever.
You're kidding.
Ever.
Well,
he always makes it different, and it always works.
Well, that's just a sign of a really skilled musician then.
True fact.
On his part. All right, so final thoughts on the entire Shine On before we move on. Becca?
Yeah. I hate to reprise that, but it's such a well-crafted song, like with all the emotions perfectly weaved in as they should be. It captures what it wants to capture very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Final thoughts,
What
Garrett?
else can you say? Becca summed it up pretty perfectly.
Yeah, my final thought is pretty much the same. At the end, it's 13 and a half minutes, and you forget that it was that long.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've actually played this to friends as we were driving, and my buddy Peter, who you know, Garrett, we've driven while this song was playing, and then when it got to track 2, I looked over at him and I said, "Did you know that was 13 minutes?" And he was like, "You're kidding me." Didn't even feel like it. So let's move on to track 2 of this album. Is called "Welcome to the Machine." It's you know what, I'm gonna say my opinion because mine's kind of degrading. Let's start with something. Let's start with someone else. So let's go to Becca first.
It's very good at capturing the sort of bleak attitude towards the business side of things.
And Garrett.
Well, quick little bit of background. It's basically about the band being disillusioned with the music industry and how it squashes artists, which is kind of odd since they work inside the industry. But it's them saying we're not as creative as we could be because of these terrible people that honestly ruin people's lives. They've often said that music industry is not entirely to blame, but definitely a large part of why Sid broke down.
Was that trying to squeeze another pop hit out of him.
Yeah.
It's just putting too much pressure on him.
Yeah.
While he was already way in deep with the drugs.
Yeah, if you watch interviews with their first manager, he talks about the pressure that they put on. You know, when Arnold Lane was a minor hit and then See Emily Play was a hit, he says, you had a hit, now I want another hit. That's not as good as your last hit, or I want a bigger show with more people, and it comes down to all I wanted to do was play my guitar and write a song. And
not make an entire album of hits.
Yeah, and this stardom thing doesn't make you happy.
No. As for what I feel about this song, man, I love it because, again, imagery, all of the sound effects that make it sound like a whirring machine.
Yeah. As opposed to human that art should be.
Yeah. All the synthesizers around it that, make everything sound so incredibly processed. Really adds to the whole nothing is as it seems, nothing is real in the music industry feeling that it gives you. And yeah, I think it's fantastic. I love singing it because it's easy to sing-ish. Fun fact, this is the only song that Pink Floyd ever cheated vocals on because David Gilmour actually can't sing as high as he does on the track. So they just slowed down the vocal track a bit and then sped it back up.
Well, there you go.
Oh, wow, I never knew that.
Yeah, and you talked about this song being sound processed. There are probably music purists who wouldn't like that, but I think for this song it works because it's trying to show like the fakeness of the music industry.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. It fits thematically.
It also reminds.
Can't actually do this. This is fake. Haha.
Yeah. It honestly something that didn't occur to me until lately when I really listened to this album because I was planning for this show, and I heard the beginning and you hear that little buzz sound and then it sounds like a click, and then I was like, that sounds like someone clocking in to a factory. And I was like, I didn't even notice that. I've heard this album for 2 years and I didn't even notice that till just recently. I was like, it's the sound of somebody clicking in to work, and then as the song abruptly ends, that's them clicking out, clocking out. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And then there's that whole room full of people. It sounds like it's like a party, or it sounds like it's.
It's a cocktail party. We're going to have lots of fun, and we're going to be completely straightforward with these people we've never met before, and we have to kiss their asses. Again, it's all fake.
Yeah, it's all fake. And what I was getting at earlier when I said I have some degrading thoughts is that this was for a long time one of my least favorite Pink Floyd songs ever. I didn't like it. I thought Roger's whining vocals, kind of put me off. This was to me the start of that whole thing.
Actually, Roger isn't singing the high part.
That's we're discussing having a cigar because no.
The high part is sung by Gilmour. That's why, like I said, he couldn't actually hit the note. They had to fix that.
Well, okay. Well, then whoever. I always thought it was.
Are we talking Welcome to the Machine or?
Yeah, Welcome to the Machine.
Okay, I didn't know if we had moved on to have a cigar yet.
No, we're still in Welcome to the Machine. I was saying that whoever was singing it, I didn't love the whininess of it. I thought it wasn't until years later that I started to appreciate the song, like when I actually, started to work and have jobs, that the song started to make more sense to me, and I started to like it, and I do like it. It's my least favorite on the album out of the 5 songs that are on it, let's put it that way, but it's no longer one of my least favorite songs of theirs ever. It was for a long time. It's grown on me tremendously. So
I used to song my parents in the car with the whole beginning, whoa, 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 because it would like the mix I had for whatever reason would be so much louder than the rest of the song, so the bass part would just bother everyone in the vehicle.
Oh, if you listen to the song especially the remastered version 2011, I found that the synthesizers they rip your throat out. They sound incredible in the remaster.
So good.
Yeah, and you're right. They kind of fixed the bass for the remaster, but the synths just sound so. When I say beautiful, I'm putting that in air quotes because it's supposed to sound fake and, like you said, processed.
Menacing even.
Yeah. So.
In the artistic statement it's trying to make, it's beautiful for what it does.
Speaking of beautiful, artistic, and menacing, have y'all seen the music video for Welcome to the Machine?
There's a music.
That's part of this. Hang on, let me rummage through the.
There should be some pictures of it in there.
Very good at paying attention. I have the Immersion box set next to me because I make bad decisions with my finances. And let's see, there's a whole DVD of videos and artwork, etc. So it might be the concert scream film for Welcome to the Machine. The whole animation is on our DVDs.
Yep. If you haven't seen it, it is on YouTube, and you should totally watch it. Mm-hmm. Just be warned that as far as animations go, this is R-rated.
Well, this was, if I'm not mistaken, it was around this time that they were working with Gerald Scarfe.
Yeah, he did the music video.
Right. So I'm saying for those who wonder who exactly he is, or they wanted to know when did he begin with the Floyd, it was around this time, I think.
Yeah. Scarfe also worked on the artwork for the wall.
Well, I think that's what he's most known for his Floyd work. But
Yes, it is.
I'm saying for those who want to get a little bit of pre-wall work, he started around this time. Okay, so final thoughts on Welcome to the Machine, Garrett?
Fantastic piece of work, especially, might I add, the synth solo at the end is freaking phenomenal.
That's what I was getting at.
Oh, good.
That's what I was getting at, especially, like I said, in the remaster, it just sounds so much better.
Okay. Oh, good. Just the synth stuff throughout this entire album is just phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. So with that, we are going to take a break, and we will be back to talk about side 2 of Wish You Were Here right after this.
Oh, no commercial here. So, carry on.
And we are back talking about that album by that one group, brought to you by that one show, which is us. We're talking about Pink Floyd, Wish You Were Here. Yeah, Wish You Were Here. Yeah, we're the best, and there's no one else like us. If we say so ourselves. We're on side 2 of the album. If you have it on LP, or if you're on CD, it's track 3, and it's the track we're talking about now is "Have a Cigar," the best Pink Floyd song that Pink Floyd never sang. Well, if you don't count "Great Gig in the Sky," that is. We'll get to all that. So, "Have a Cigar" opens side 2. It changes, but this is probably my favorite song on the whole album. I really like it. I love the idea that it comes after Welcome to the Machine, which was, biting the hand that fed you, and this is the other attack on it. So, Garrett, what do you think of it? I'm kind of lost for words a little bit. No pun intended.
Yeah. This song is great. I love it. Because, first of all, this is not sung by any member of Pink Floyd. This is one of the only guest stars they ever have. Roy Harper, the folk singer, sings on it. Because Roger had blown his voice out singing Shine On, and David wasn't particularly keen on doing it. So they said, "Hey, Roy, come here. We'll pay you to sing on this song." And so now he probably gets zillions of dollars in royalties on it.
Probably.
Oh, boy, does he deserve them, because
It is so good.
excellent. I think that if any other way is just not as good. And of course, I believe that was proven by the alternative version, which is present on here.
Yes.
I said who was on vocals for that. I think Gilmore's on vocals.
It's Gilmore and Waters.
Yeah, Gilmore and Waters split it, and it's not nearly as good.
Yeah. Waters is singing the high part. Gilmore is singing the low part, and you can definitely hear why neither of them work well on
And
this song.
it's not so good.
Well, actually, if I may, you're right. Gilmore doesn't do this song justice, but Roger's vocals I think is not bad. It's definitely strained because, like you said, he blew his voice out. I think he could have done a good version of this, but Roy's version is just so much better, and also it's very dear to us because that's the one that we know the best. But if I may,
think that had Waters not blown his voice out, then he could have easily done a very good job with this song.
I think so.
agree.
Yeah, and after hearing this version, that it kind of confirms what you just said. I think he would have done a good version, which always surprised me that like they can't record this song like on a different day. Because, this was probably recorded the same day or around that time they're working on Shine On. They can't wait for Waters' voice to get good, or maybe it's the idea, maybe the music industry was pressuring them that they needed an album out. And I don't know. I don't know the circumstances behind it, but Roy's vocal is just so good, so good.
It sounds like they were in a time crunch, and Harper was there recording his album. I think it was HQ.
You are correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said, "Can you just do this real quick?" I said, "Sure," for a price.
Mm-hmm, for a price. And
Oh my, what a price.
oh yes, especially if I'm gonna jump ahead. If you watch the documentary, The Story of Wish You Were Here, there's segments where the producer Brian Humphreys is playing with the vocal tracks, and you hear Roy just by himself with no instrumentation, and it sounds really good.
Yeah. He just put his all into it.
Yeah, especially when you hear him.
Auctioneer type quality of trying to like sell this band off,
Right.
Yeah.
Especially when you hear the lines of songs like, you got to get an album out. You owe it to the people. We're so happy we can hardly count. If you hear that just alone, that was just such a great thing to listen to. I think we've said enough about Roy's voice just fitting this song so well. And it's completely ironic that it's a song about, it's Pink Floyd complaining about the industry, yet it's somebody else singing on it. So it's almost like Roy agrees with them in a way.
Yeah. Also, I have heard, again, on bootlegs, live versions of this song with Roger singing the lead vocals on it. And you know what? He does a damn good job.
He's also got that shouty quality to his voice. It's like the Roy vocals are like a cleaned up version of the quality Waters would have brought to it.
Yeah,
That's a really good way to phrase that.
definitely.
I had never thought of that. It is probably my favorite song on the album. I always get a kick out of I kind of giggle with the lyrics because they're so brilliant and they're so sarcastic and they're so funny, and there's so much you can say about these lyrics. But I have this one qualm, and maybe you guys can help me. But what the hell is a gravy train? Does anybody know what that means?
That is music business lingo for making it big. One of my favorite things is kind of about how uncomfortably real the lyrics can be at times. Like, he asked the question, by the way, which one of you guys is Pink?
True story.
So many times.
Yeah, that happens so much that people don't think that Pink Floyd as a group, they think of it as a person, and they have to ask which member of the band is named Pink Floyd. And they're like,
It's very much a biting commentary on the music industry and the music press, and really everything about it is in this song.
yeah, they just don't pay enough attention.
Feeling or what art is, just the processing and the marketing of it, what makes it what it is, what makes it so damn good.
Mm-hmm. And it also goes to the idea of being very fake. Take the opening lines, for example. Come in here, dear boy, have a cigar. You're gonna go far. And then later in the song, it's revealed that things are not going to go very well. So, but the have a cigar kind of line is very much like things are going to, don't worry about it. Things are going to be okay.
If you do what I say, everything's gonna be all right.
Yeah, if you trust
Oh, you're so good. You're only gonna be as good as I make you.
Yeah, it's like if you trust us, and Roger's just saying, by the way, don't trust these people. I love the biting sarcasm in it. It's really good. That's all I can say about it. It's probably my favorite.
And speaking of biting, have you ever heard the bootleg of the live performance that Roy Harper did with the band?
No, I never did.
In 1975 at the Knebworth Festival, he happened to be there, and Pink Floyd was playing there, and they said, "Hey, Roy, you sang on the album. How about you come sing on the track live with us?" And he said, "Sure." Later that day, everything in his trailer was stolen.
Oh no.
So when he got on stage to sing it, he was a little bit mad, and you could definitely hear it.
Well, then I would encourage, especially myself, to go find that bootleg and to take a listen to it.
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube, but be warned, the quality is absolute shite.
Mm-hmm. But
So-
yeah, well, that was how people recorded concerts back then. It's not like they walked in with a full stereo, recorder in their pocket.
Well, some people actually did.
Some people did, but they were, they were enormous back in those days. Also, Foo Fighters did a good version of this song.
Oh, have they? I haven't heard it.
Oh yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's on YouTube if you want to find it, but it's also, if you want to find it like legally available, it's on the Amazon MP3 store. I believe that's the only place you can actually find it and buy it.
Okay.
Yeah, they did a nice version of it too. And since they're a heavy band, it added to the the biting heaviness of the song anyway. So
Yeah.
definitely check it out for anyone who hasn't heard it.
All right.
Also,
Very well listened.
yeah. Also, fun fact about Roy Harper is that people may not know he actually inspired 2 more Pink Floyd songs. He is the inspiration behind Echoes of all things, being the one of the first people to have a suite take up an entire side of an album, which inspired the band to do Echoes. And also, we talked about this in one of our older episodes. He inspired the song "One of My Turns" from The Wall, where he actually found his costume in his trailer disappeared, and he smashed the mirror, and his hand was cut really bad, just like in the movie. So, a little bit of fun trivia for those who want more Roy Harper Pink Floyd connections. Check out those 2 songs and the stories behind them, and you'll see that he's not just a one-hit wonder, so to speak, with this song. Right.
Also, really quick, that solo at the end is fantastic.
Oh yes, especially if you listen to the alternate version on the Immersion and Experience edition, where it goes on and on and on. It's an extended jam at the end, which I like.
And Snowy White did it justice live as well.
Well, Snowy White did a good job too. But all right, so let's move on to the endearing song that people love and love and love and love. It's the title track, "Wish You Were Here." Rolling Stone in 2010 named it at 324 of the 500 songs of all time. And I know many, many rock fans have said this is their favorite song of all time. I know that we're probably going to have some deep conversation about this. So, you know what? Let's go to Becca first about thoughts on "Wish You Were Here" as a song.
As a song, it's gorgeous. Because there's the whole theme of something being missing, of alienation, all that stuff. And this is whereas the Shine On You Crazy Diamond intro is the introduction to the idea of alienation and separation, and then Welcome to the Machine and Have a Cigar, having the coldness and sterility and just artificial, businessy things alienating you from everything. This is to me where the human side comes back in.
I totally agree.
It's the very even the switch from all the synths to just a simple acoustic guitar, and the way it sounds like a person just hearing something flicking around and then hearing something on the radio and then playing along with it.
Oh, I love that.
That's what it sounds. It sounds like someone sitting in their room listening to a song and going, "Oh, okay, I can do this."
It reminds me of we didn't even mention the way that Have a Cigar ends and goes into that radio sound and somebody switching stations, and this is the song that they tune to.
Your speakers blowing out or something.
Yeah, they captured it so well on this album, on these 2 tracks going back to back. Well, Garrett, thoughts on "Wish You Were Here"? I know that you've talked about this song a lot.
Yeah. It works. I think it works best as one of the tracks on the. It works best as being part of the album, and not just one that I would automatically go to and say, "I'm going to play this one by itself."
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it really. Again, like Becca said, it's part of the story. and it fits best here. I really love the way that it's introduced by the guy flipping through the radio, like we said. It's just so fantastic. I just love that. And something about the lyrics is just so honest and so straightforward. This is like the only song on the album, by the way, that doesn't have double-tracked vocals.
It's very sparse.
Yeah, and it's so definitely, like I said, it's the human element that's finally peeking through. It is beautiful, and there is a reason that it is often hailed as one of the greatest songs of all time.
I would agree.
You listen to that riff and you automatically go, "Oh yeah, I like this already."
I agree with you. I hadn't thought about that. This one is actually the song I think I don't look at the song separately. I play this song best. It works best in context with this album. I mean, it is a great song, but it's not one that I seek out individually. It's actually a song that, I'm going to be brutally honest, I was actually tired of for a long, long time, because when
it can be overrated a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. I learned it on guitar, and I've played it so many times that for family or for friends or just in the public, that eventually you get to a point where you're like, oh, I wish you were here. It's like, enough already. I am so sick of this song.
Shut up.
Yeah. No. That's why I said this is a great song in terms of the album. It's not one that I seek out individually. I really like the song. I think it's beautiful. It's the most beautiful song on the album, of course. Acoustic guitars, piano underlaying the verses, which I like a lot, especially since I play piano and I can listen to that and think it just adds so much to this side of the album, so to speak, or this side of this song. It brings it out so well.
Makes it for me.
Yeah, I know.
Especially on live versions. Again, listen to the 77 bootleg versions. They just straight up add a piano solo at the end. And Rick Wright just goes on as long as he damn well pleases. And we're like, okay, sir.
I think this is actually the song on this album, to me at least, that speaks very directly to Sid. Well, of course, other than Shine On. This is really the second song on this album that speaks directly to Sid about, the idea of a steel rail, that's taken from, I read somewhere that's taken from one of Sid's solo songs, If It's In You, from Madcap Laughs. But of course, there's no confirmation that the Floyd actually, took it from that source. We didn't even mention, and I read this somewhere just recently, that a part inspiration for this song was Roger Waters wrote it around the time that his grandmother was dying, and so that helped with.
Really?
Oh yeah, that helped with the idea of absence. There have been reports that he would visit his grandmother, and she kept calling him Robert, which is actually her husband's name. So technically, that would be like Alzheimer's. Like that's how it would be classified today.
Yeah.
So the idea of that was going through his mind, and Sid was obviously present in his mind, and it's one of those songs that it's very beautiful. It doesn't need a lot of interpretation, or it doesn't need a lot to talk about, because it says very much right there in the song.
Right. It says what it says.
Yes, it says what it says. Like, you don't have to explain the idea of two lost souls swimming in a fish bowl. Like, you understand that imagery as it is. So, do we have anything more to say about "Wish You Were Here"? Or do you think?
Yeah, we didn't mention the alternate version.
Oh, of course, yeah.
The alternate version.
Yes, let's give a little background to that. Help me with the pronunciation of this. Stefan Grappelli.
Yes.
Classical violinist, mostly known for Django Reinhardt, was brought in to give it, as Gilmore said, a kind of a country flavor to it. He was recorded, but eventually mixed out. And people have said that you can hear him on the final version, but I don't at all. I don't hear anything like a violin at the end of this recorded version.
apparently, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page here. If you turn up the volume really loud, you can barely hear him at the 521 mark.
Well, you know what? I've heard the song for years and years. Even when I had heard that there was a violin on it, I still can't hear it.
Yeah, me either.
But you're right. On the alternate version, his solo is there in its entirety, and you can kind of see why they took him out.
A little bit. It's interesting to hear this version, though.
Right.
It's a little bit too much.
Yeah.
It's a little. I think he goes on a little bit too long. He sounds like he doesn't know what the chord is that he has to solo over. But it's really cool because I can imagine, as somebody who was a Floyd fan, we knew that he had done a part of this, and this came out in 2011, and we finally get to hear it in its entirety. It's really, and also, you know, there's also different guitar parts that are going throughout the song. Like the solo at the beginning is actually different.
Yes, it is.
Which is a really unique thing to hear because, you know, you're so used to that beginning solo and the way that it opens, and this one is like, it's more rough. You can tell that they're getting somewhere with this song. It's really, really good. If anybody hasn't heard it, we implore you to go check it out, especially if you're a Floyd fan and you love this song. Yes. So, all right. So wrapping up the album is track 5, or the closer on side 2, and it's "Shine On You Crazy Diamond" parts 6 through 9. Although on the CD, like the old CD, it says it's part 2, which is wrong.
Part 1 and part 2. Like, that's dumb.
Yeah, if you have like an old CD copy somewhere, it's part 1 and part 2, which it's not. So the Shine On Sweet begins with part 6, where it comes back in very, you know, very breezy with the wind sound effects, and it's almost not there at the very beginning until that first guitar bit comes in, and the synths go crazy on it.
Oh, it's almost like they're riding on the wind. The notes, really.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. It's, well, Garrett, what do you think of it? That first bit of "Shine On."
If there's something that Pink Floyd knows how to do, it's build a song.
Yep.
Like this. Starting with just the bass guitar, and then the synths come in, and the rhythm guitar parts come in, and then, oh my gosh, it's a slide guitar, and then the drums, and then everything builds so well. It's like the reemergence of echoes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That solo is just fantastic.
Yeah, that's all we ever say about music. It's good.
This is good. I like it.
That's the epitome of our show.
Our show is just, what do you think about this song? It's good. It's good. What do you have to say, Becca? Richard Wright. Okay, let's move on. That's it. That's the entire show. You can all go home.
Part 7 of the song is when the guitar comes in and begins the theme, or the melody again. And this is also my second favorite guitar solo in the entire Shine On Suite, because it brings back a familiar, you know, piece of music to you. I love how it brings back around. It turns that crazy, you know, wild synthesizer, you know, section into something more sophisticated. And again, I'm going to repeat myself, it's so good.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything else to add other than just it's good? Becca?
This is good.
Then we'll go to Garrett, who probably has more to say about it.
All right, let's go.
What I really like about, well, maybe not really like, but something interesting that I've seen about this section, I've heard the lyrics change to it sometimes, where, you know, on the album it's pile on many more layers. In early versions, and even in more modern live versions, you can hear it say peel away many more layers. I'm not entirely sure. I still go with pile on as being the definitive version of it, but it's interesting that Roger recently sings peel away, because, you know, obviously it's reversing the entire meaning of that line, whatever you want it to be.
That's interesting.
Actually, now this is probably a good time to bring up that my favorite version of Shine On is actually the version that's on the Echoes, the Best Of compilation, where it combines parts 1 through 7. because you get to hear all of the words. I mean, I like live versions, but personally, that studio version that's on the Echoes is my personal favorites, because you get all of that stuff, and you don't get the parts 8 through 9 that we're going to talk about in a second. But to me, that's okay. We move on to part 8 of the song, which is the first of the 2 instrumental bits at the end. And it's actually, I find it to be a really nice jam, like a really nice groove. You almost forget that it's the same song.
Yeah, man, Pink Floyd getting funky.
Mm-hmm. Which usually they would reserve that for live, but it's awesome that they can replicate it here in the studio.
Yeah, I love the live versions of Part 8 because they can go on for as long as 10 minutes. With Gilmore and Snowy White, their supporting guitarist on the tour, would play. They would trade their guitar solos, the duel of the awesome guitarists, and it would just go on, and it was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Becca, did you have any thoughts on this part 8, this sort of like groovy jam bit?
What a jam indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is. And then that leads into part 9, because there really isn't much to talk about these last 2 parts, but part 9 is people have called it Sid's Blues or Sid's Groove, because it's the last bit of music on this album, and it's really dedicated mainly to him, where everybody comes together. And then what I love mostly about this part is actually the very ending, where it actually ends on a major chord, as if to say that there is probably still hope for Sid.
There's light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
And I like the little Easter egg where you could hear the melody from See Emily Play.
Yeah.
Just as it starts to fade out.
Yeah.
That's my favorite part of the entire thing.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
So well done.
Yeah.
And
Sadly, though, there was no light at the end of the tunnel for Sid, but there was still hope.
I think of the major chord differently, though.
How's
I
that?
think of it being, yes, he's gone, but look at everything he has given to us, and we are eternally grateful to you, Mr. Barrett. And this is just the Pink Floyd members themselves talking. It's all the fans, too.
That's I actually never thought of it that way, about how it's a look back instead of a look forward. So, Garrett, final thoughts on Shine On Parts 6 through 9?
A fantastic collection, again. I really want to hear a really good edited version of parts 1 through 9 put together. And apparently, Tom, you said something about there being a thunderclap mix somewhere?
Yes, I was just about to get that. There is a really strange bootleg version where somebody took parts 1 through 9 and for some odd reason added like thunder or lightning sounds under the entire 26-minute when you combine these 2 parts together. And that's a little unnecessary for me, but I think they did that because they didn't want you to hear the edit. But that has surfaced. You can find it probably on YouTube somewhere. But personally, I think the Floyd could still do it. They could still make a version of parts 1 through 9. I mean, they did it with the Echoes compilation where they combined parts 1 through 7. But you're right. I would love to hear a 1 through 9 in its entirety as a pure, clean mix.
I have actually heard, again, a live version where this was on the Brain Damage podcast run by the Doctor. Shout out to you, sir.
Yes.
Where he edited all 9 parts from, I believe it was the Oakland Coliseum in 1977 together, and it made about half an hour of music.
But as Floyd fans, that's something that we don't mind being half an hour.
Exactly.
Half an hour is nothing.
It's awesome.
So,
half an hour is Echoes.
Yes. So those 2 together, and then you get an hour of awesome Pink Floydness. All right, so
Indeed.
that wraps up our discussion. A really long discussion on a really short album, really. But that's just who we are.
What else would you expect from us, really, though?
Yes. So real quickly, because we want to get to the experience stuff. Becca has the Immersion set with her, and she's agreed to quickly go over what is actually in the box for those who haven't had a chance to actually, spend not thousands of dollars, but a lot of money to go get it. So please, Becca.
Not thousands of dollars. I can't handle that.
Yeah, so please guide us.
It was a little over 100, and it was back when I had a very nicely paying summer job. So basically, it's a box that's about the dimensions of your average LP, that kind of square shape, and it's about, I think, 1.5 inches deep or so. So you open the box, and there's a nice little ribbon sticking out of it and everything, and on top, you got just layers on layers of stuff. It came with a scarf, which at first it was missing from the box because I took it out to use it, and I found it, as well as the scarf that came in my Dark Side Immersion set. So since it is very, very cold in New Jersey, I have both of them draped over my person because I am developing hypothermia.
Yay!
That's fun.
Comes with a scarf, which is lovely for those in colder regions. There are some coasters in here, which are, I haven't taken them out here. They feel pretty nice. They got artwork on them and letters. I think they spell out Pink Floyd. I don't know if there's enough of them to do that. There's some marbles, which if you've been hearing annoying clicking noises the entire podcast, I've just been playing with the marbles the entire time. They're completely clear as opposed to the ones in the Dark Side box set, which at first I was like, oh come on, they don't have any artwork on them. But Tom brought up an interesting point that they could be fitting with the whole theme of absence, and I was like, you're right. But also when you hold them up and look through them, everything is all flipped upside down and looks really weird. So it could just be for artsy, strange lens purposes too, which I can appreciate equally as much. So you take all those out, and then there's the first of your little paper, or rather heavier paper, little slips that has CDs in them. And this one is actually disc 5, the entire thing. And this is the Blu-ray disc, and it has the high-resolution audio and audio-visual material. So you have the 5.1 surround mix of the album, the original stereo mix of the album, the 4.0 quad mix of the album, and then concert screen films, both in stereo and 5.1 surround, as well as a Storm Thorgerson short film.
Yeah, and
Much stuff.
yeah, a lot of
And
stuff.
that's the Blu-ray disc. There's a regular disc of that somewhere else in here because I don't have a Blu-ray player. I wonder why I bought this.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, the Blu-ray disc are the contents of the 2 DVDs all in one disc.
Yes.
Yeah. And then of course it also comes with the standard album remastered and then the disc of the unreleased tracks. As a side note to that, we will also want to clarify, if you buy the Experience Edition, which I have, you get the 2 discs, you get the album remastered, and you get the disc of the unreleased tracks, and you get a nice little booklet that has mainly lyrics and credits, nothing, no liner notes or anything like that, but the Floyd aren't really about liner notes and things like that. So if you want just the music, you can pick up the Experience Edition, and of course the Immersion set is, glorious and enormous, as Becca kindly pointed out to us. So you can go find that and enjoy your marbles and your scarf. There's so much goodness in it. Okay, so
there's not if you're just going for the tracks, then the Experience is a much better buy. I'm quite possibly clinically insane and a glutton for punishment. So this also has 4 discs, which is just hang on. It's supposed to be in these little slips, much like the slip I just pulled the Blu-ray disc from. But there's a little thing in the very back of the box to just kind of press all the discs and hold them all together, and I like that better. So if you take everything out and put them in the bottom, you have your disc 1, which is the remaster of the album. Your disc 2, which is the unreleased material. Your disc 3, which is the audio DVD. And your disc 4, which is the concert screen films and all that sort of stuff on DVD.
great. And as a 3rd edition, I'm looking to see if you buy the Experience Edition on iTunes, you get an iTunes LP, which is basically the booklet and all sorts of stuff laid out for you, and you get some stuff in there, like a digital replica of the tour program that's in the Immersion set, and you also get.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah, and you get to see a Pink Floyd comic strip in there.
So much fun to read.
Yes. Also, if you buy the iTunes version, you also get the Shine on Your Crazy Diamond concert screen film. So technically, there are 3 different ways that you can buy this in a deluxe edition. So we've about covered everything. We also want to be able to talk about real quickly the unreleased tracks that are on the 2nd disc. They are.
This thing also has very big books full of pictures.
Oh.
There's a lot of Storm Ferguson art. There's lyrics such as little notes that would be shoved into the LP. And then there's a book of pictures around the time that this was being recorded. There's Gilmore and Wright's in a bathroom. It looks like a nice bathroom, and I think you can see Roger peeing on the side, but that's just speculation.
Yeah.
There's little trading cards that nobody knows what to do with, and there's the fake concert tickets and backstage passes that are just cool, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's a little book of credits. There's a lot of paper, like those books that have fake merchandise that you pull out of the books, except it's all in a box, and it comes with a scarf.
Yeah.
I like this scarf.
Yeah, so that is everything that's in the Immersion set. Real quickly, we want to talk about the unreleased tracks. Just real quickly to name what they are. They are Shine On You Crazy Diamond, You Gotta Be Crazy, and Raving and Drooling, live at Wembley Arena in 1974. Wine Glasses from the Household Objects Project. Have a Cigar, the alternate version, which we talked about earlier. And then the Wish You Were Here with Stefan Grappelli, which we talked about earlier. Real quickly, let's go over the unreleased tracks and give thoughts on them. Let's start with, appropriately, the 3 live tracks, which are Shine On You Crazy Diamond, You Gotta Be Raving and Drooling, and You've Gotta Be Crazy. We mentioned that Raving and Drooling later became Sheep from on Animals, and You Gotta Be Crazy became Dogs on Animals. I liked these live versions, different lyrics, which I found really interesting, that of course didn't show up in the regular version. Let's hear overall thoughts on the live tracks. Becca, what do you think of these live performances?
After you read up on all your history and you learn of the existence of these early versions of the Animals tracks, you're undoubtedly curious. So finally being able to hear these and own these on some sort of recording is very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very interesting to hear these songs taking shape.
Yeah, I'd actually heard before getting the Experience edition of Wish You Were Here. I'd actually heard the 1974 version of You Gotta Be Crazy. I believe the exact same performance, just not remastered, so it was in crappy bootleg quality.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I remember being just amazed at, like, damn, there are a lot of lyrics in this song.
There are.
And there are actually other bootlegs where you can hear a version that is closer to the Animals version, but still using some of the same lyrics from You've Gotta Be Crazy. So it's, you can see the development. It goes from having a whole lot of lyrics to having fewer lyrics to having changed fewer lyrics.
Mm-hmm. And it was nice to get these actually released, because you said these live tracks appeared on tons and tons of bootlegs, but not in great quality. It's nice that they actually had a tape, and they're now officially released, and the quality has been cleaned up dramatically.
And Shine On.
You can actually hear everything.
Yeah. And Shine On in this version is so cool to hear. Yeah. This is one of the earlier versions, like we said in 74, when it was still in development, when they still had it, when it was still the idea that this would be a sidelong track. So it's a little bit shorter. It's about 20 minutes instead of 25 or so when you put it all together.
It's actually faster.
Yeah, there are parts. There are differences. Like, they don't have Dick Perry there playing saxophone. So if you're familiar with, the final studio version, it sounds kind of empty. And even if you aren't familiar, it still sounds like there's something missing.
It's very.
Let's get it.
Yeah.
Back to the theme.
Yeah, with the theme. It's very.
Circle again.
Yeah. You are right. The live version is very raw. You can tell that it's a work in progress.
And again, it has the peel away lyrics instead of pile on.
Yes, so it's interesting that was added at an early stage. And it's weird that it's a work in progress live, so a paying audience is hearing it, which is kind of cool. It was really cool to hear, like I said, really cool to hear these tracks legitimately released. But I want to toss something out, and Garrett, we've talked about this off mic, and I want to bring it up. We have the Dark Side of the Moon experience in the Immersion set include Dark Side of the Moon live at Wembley Arena 1974, and we also get these 3 tracks live in Wembley Arena 1974. Could we have had an entire 74 concert or concert tour as an official live album from 74? Garrett, I'm going to have you answer first, since you and I have talked about this.
I don't really see any reason why not. Also, a lot of these tracks have been officially released, except for just 1 or 2. Maybe not 1 or 2, but a few have not been released. I think that if you use the tracks that have been released then find some real high quality bootlegs. You can make the CDs yourself.
I was about to say, I believe I own a very nice bootleg of all this material.
Oh, really? I might have to get in on that. We'll talk, Becca.
Oh, yes.
But see, that was my point. We get that when we get Dark Side Wembley and we get this Wembley. Could we have had a whole Wembley gig? And it's possible, but now that you've said these have been released, you can kind of just make your own.
Yeah. Also keep in mind that.
Too lazy.
Also keep in mind that there were multiple performances at the Wembley. Like I've said in the Dark Side of the Moon episode, that the live version is actually a matrix of 2 concerts.
Right.
At least 2.
Which is what I was getting at. Could we have had a 74 tour album, like the best performances from each night? But that's a thought. But also another thought is, we said previously that they'd done the album live in 76 and 77. Could we have gotten that, like just the album live?
I think we totally should have.
Yeah.
So, but again, it would have been devil's advocate because we would have gotten those live tracks, but we wouldn't have gotten these alternative versions of "Have a Cigar" and "Wish You Were Here," which I think are wonderful to hear. Hopefully, when they get around to doing Animals Immersion set, that will hopefully,
Totally should.
yeah, that will hopefully be included in there, the live Animals and the live "Wish You Were Here," because it was on the same
Animals.
it was on the same tour.
Yeah.
All right.
Live Animals. I see what you did there.
Yeah, live Animals. So.
Also, speaking of animals, I don't know if y'all saw this, but they recently found some of the demos from the animal sessions.
What?
Yeah, I've heard. No, I haven't heard any of them. I was thinking
When
something else.
did
But
this happen?
if you check out the Brain Damage podcast, he's got a show about that. You can probably hear all of them on that show.
Oh,
Yeah. Just don't watch the shredding videos.
Oh
I
gosh.
love them.
Oh jeez.
Very good.
All right. So anyway, the final track that we want to talk about on the unreleased track, really quickly, is the Wine Glasses from the Household Objects Project. Excuse me. This is, as we said earlier, this was the attempted follow-up to Dark Side of the Moon. Only 2 tracks have been released, which is The Hard Way, which was on the Dark Side Immersion set, and now this, Wine Glasses, which the Wine Glasses obviously helped turn into the opening of Shine On.
Yep.
I liked this. I mean, it's really 2 minutes of the same thing, but it's really cool that now it's part of the released canon, because the Household Object stuff has never ever been bootlegged before, which means that the Floyd actually have the actual tapes. So give us more. We want it. Yeah, I think it's a nice piece. I don't have much to say about it. Does anybody have any other thoughts on it, Garrett?
Well, like I said, I love the version of Shine On from Gdansk, which was actually played on live Wine Glasses. So this version is little tidbit of that is fantastic to listen to. So fantastic, in fact, and it's really easy to replicate, which I have already done.
So there's a little plug for those who hopefully is it on your Bandcamp site?
I don't actually know. Let me check that real quick. Becca, talk about it.
What? What am I talking about?
Talking about if you have any thoughts on the Wine Glasses track.
Oh, it's a very interesting thing to hear. Yes.
Okay, so now that their conversation has gone on way longer than the album, and including the unreleased tracks, I know we like to give a rating for these albums. So let's go around and rate "Wish You Were Here," the album that we know and love by Pink Floyd. Who's going to start this time?
All right. So, as you can tell, as I've already said, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I think it accomplishes exactly what it sets out to do. I think it balances lyrics and music particularly well. Gilmour has often said he thought Dark Side was a little bit too lyrical, and Wish You Were Here a little more balanced in his point of view. In fact, Richard Wright often said that Wish You Were Here is probably the album out of all of the Pink Floyd things that he could actually sit down and listen to for pleasure.
I have to say that in my thing.
Yeah, well, you could say it again.
No.
Okay,
And so I have to say, I can't give this album any higher praise than it deserves. This gets 5 out of 5 Target Business.
your first perfect score! Yay!
You
So-
can hear the confetti just flowing through the air.
It was like, Garrett gives it a 5! And then there was much rejoicing, as they say in Monty Python.
There was much rejoicing.
Yay.
Alright, so... Becca, are you going to go next, or do you want me to go next?
I cannot assign a numerical value to this. It's just beautiful, perfect, excellent, phenomenal, wonderful.
So, would you give it maybe a thumbs up?
Yeah, sure.
All right,
Whatever
well-
you want to do.
That's a
2
rate.
thumbs, way up.
Okay. Well, that,
So far up that my arm is ripped from my body and it ascends into the sun.
well then, perfect. So, all right. So for me, I'm gonna give it out of 4 diamonds. I'm gonna give it 3.5. I do like this album, and you're right. There are times where I like this a lot more, but sometimes I forget how short the album is, and that kind of takes away a little bit from me, just a little bit. And then the other, quarter that I'm taking off is sometimes I'm not in the mood to hear "Welcome to the Machine" or "Wish You Were Here," but I'm gonna give it a solid 3.5 out of 4
Excellent.
as my rating. So, what
I
do
will
you
say, if there's one criticism that I could level at this album, it's that there are only 4 songs.
see? That bugs me a little bit.
And that's just about it. Most of the time, I'm willing to overlook it and say, you know what, they're all brilliant, let's go.
Yes. And also, if you ask me to rate both this and the unreleased tracks together, I might even give it, more than a 3.5, because I think the unreleased tracks give me more quantity, and that's sometimes what I look forward to with bonus stuff, is quantity.
Yeah.
All right. So what do you think of the album? If you listen to us, you can contact us in many, many ways. You can write to us.
Please,
On
we're lonely.
Yes. You can send us messages. You can. It doesn't matter how you send it. You can send it via Twitter, Facebook. You can send it via carrier pigeon, dove, whatever you
I
desire.
like birds.
whatever you so desire. Yes, write to us. We're lonely. We talk about albums because we have nothing better to do.
Yeah.
Yes, and so we have a couple things.
Saturday night.
Yeah, so we have a couple things to plug before we go. Garrett has his website where you can listen to his album. Please give the URL for those who haven't heard it yet.
That would be Garrett.Hicks, Garrett, no wait, no dot. Garrett Hicks, GarrettHicks, .bandcamp.com. That's where I've got my Floydian Slips album from 2011, as well as a few other things there. And now that we're talking about literally nothing,
Yes.
I think it's time to put this out of its misery.
Well, wait. I didn't get my plugs in. But then again, who cares
Yeah,
about?
well.
Then again, who cares about me?
all right, fine, plug your stuff, Tom.
Yeah. I'm gonna plug myself. That didn't sound right. You can follow me.
Oh,
Oh, my.
Yeah.
not on recording, buddy.
No, you can. You
We're
can.
a family show.
Yes, we are. You can follow. Yeah, and if you want to hear more of my insightful thoughts, you can follow me on Twitter at @itsonlytom. There's an underscore in between all of those words, and there's no apostrophe for the word "it's." You can check out the old episodes of the show, and if you want to hear my past show, which was the Record Rant, you can find it on iTunes. And these two have been lovely on that show, appearing a number of times. You can find it on iTunes and also on Podomatic.com. That's PODOMATIC.com. And you can have some fun listening. So, for Triple Threat, we have been talking about Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, and we have been your hosts, and joining me has been Garrett Hicks,
Yeah, bye-bye, y'all.
Becca Cristino,
Bye, lovely people.
yeah, and I am Tom Rutia saying goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for listening to our review of the Pink Floyd album, Wish You Were Here. Don't forget to leave a comment, like this episode, and subscribe for more. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Maybe talk about, how Dark Side was a huge success and how they were going to top, and how they stop that. That's my phone.
What is happening? What is happening?
That was my phone.
What the fuck is that, man?
Yeah, that was my phone.
Okay, so the year is now 19 74, we'll say.
You sound like Walter Cronkite. It's 1974.
And that is how it happened. That's the way it was. No.
Okay, because I've heard that in Fuzz. Hold on. Good. Okay, it's gone.
Every time I yell at the buzzing, it goes away.
Good job, Becca.
We'll keep you in charge of that.
Kind of curled up on the floor, trying to stay warm.
Check back with her Tumblr,
Yes.
which is
Or
what?
Did you find it?
I'm not on Tumblr, so I don't look at these things. What is your Tumblr name?
That's -grody.tumblr.com.
I thought it was Grotty. I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Well, that's because you
Yeah,
watch
you're
The Hard Day's Night a lot.
Yeah.
It's dead cruelty.
It's dead Grotty.
Let's see.
Yeah.
I feel like that would have T's in it rather than a D.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Be
yeah.
close, didn't it?
So check me out and recognize my fantastic, lovely, sultry voice.
yeah, you have two of those three things.
Well,
I'm just kidding. We all love you, and I'm sure they'll love you too. Yeah.
Levels are fun.
All right, and also,
How have I not played with these before? They're so cool.
but they're clear.
Yeah, but no, that makes them cooler somehow. Like they're so weird.
big.
This is awesome.
Why are they in here? They don't have any art on them. The dark side ones have the little prism on them. These are just balls.
Yeah, I think the ones in the wall set are have bricks on them too. So,
Yeah.
So why does the Wish You Were Here one have absolutely nothing?
I don't
well,
know.
maybe not to be funny. It's the idea of absence, and there's nothing.
I was actually just about to say that before you started talking.
Oh, we're brilliant,
Just
you
looked
guys.
at me as you were about to say it.
We are so great. We're brilliant.
Mhm.
Hey, guess what? Guess what?
But what?
Becca likes playing with balls.
There's 3 of them here, so weird balls.
I'm thinking of the Keith Moon pinball interview. Big.
Shiny silver balls.
Running around the
Round
playground.
What kind of feeling do you get? What kind of feeling do you get? Sexual. Anyways,
Building
Yeah,
up a big score.
I've always loved balls.
also, I
I
think
hope
it.
you're recording, by the way.
Oh, we are.
Yay.
Yeah. It's like a water bending.
What are you talking about?
The marble, it looks like water.
Oh my gosh.
Like the cohesion and adhesion properties where it just like it makes droplets instead of just smattering everywhere.
Oh,
Science.
Okay.
it rules, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Don't mind me, I'm just eating fruit snacks.
Oh, you're doing the good thing.
Oh, yes, I am.
You're making good decisions, unlike me.
What would that be?
No, that just means that I eat a lot.
Oh, well, I still
I
do.
had greatest hot dogs today. So, but as we're on the topic of bad food decisions, one was called the Carolina Slaw Dog, and it had chili, some sort of tangy sauce, and coleslaw on it. It was surprisingly very, very good. And then the other one was the Texas Barbecue Dog.
Of course, it was the Texas dog. What's on it?
Some sort of like smoky Texas something sauce.
Barbecue sauce.
Well, that's what I assumed, but they didn't outright say it on there, so I was like, I'm gonna assume it's barbecue sauce. And oh, I just dropped it more. So it was the hot dog, and then chili, onions, bacon, and barbecue sauce.
Oh my gosh.
Sounds
That
delicious.
sounds amazing.
One of the most incredible things I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Well, speaking of food, last night my roommate and I were watching TV, and we were watching, I think it was like VH1, and The Breakfast Club came on, and we were watching the scene where they're all having lunch, and then there's this, if you haven't seen it, there's, in the scene, the crazy girl,
Oh yeah, it's the Captain Crunch sandwich.
she has
right?
like the
I don't eat one.
it's like Captain Crunch and like 6 pixie sticks sandwich, and I was watching that, and I was like, I think I'm gonna try that one of these days. when I have the luxury of having Captain Crunch back in my life.
Yeah, around the time when I first found that movie, when a bunch of the kids my age, all found that movie, this one kid I knew actually made it when he got home.
Oh, wow.
And he said it was disgustingly diabetically good.
Disgustingly diabetically good. I like it.
Fun
Like, he
fact,
sort of wanted to throw up, but it was sugar. It was pleasant.
fun fact, I have never seen The Breakfast Club.
You're missing. It's
Very
good.
worth watching. You should do that soon.
It's good. My only problem with it is that I watch it and it's made in 1985 and the teens talk so differently. So I'm like, I know it's a movie, but they had to base the dialogue off something. So like, did teens really talk like that?
Talk like this.
Yeah, well, like, do they talk like that? They actually sound smarter than we do.
No way.
Yeah, but I know, but it's like, they didn't have, the technology or the phrases that we have. Like, they don't go around saying YOLO in that movie, but.
Thank God.
I know, but the point is that they had to base the dialogue off probably how teenagers talk, and they sound so different in that movie.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Oh, is it buzzing again?
It's fading away. It's pretty much gone now.
Okay, let's get on with this then.
It's like every time I point it out, it gets scared and runs away.
Just gotta be on the ball.
Yeah. So, all right. Well,
I've got 3 of them.
yeah. All right, I'm ready then.
Look at that. That's wonderful, Becca.
That's wonderful.
Oh, speaking of which, that reminds me real quick. I'm also, I went to a casting call yesterday for a web series.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Tell her about this. This is funny.
Yeah, I told you, Tom.
Well, you told me you were going to do it.
About a superhero who his superpower is that every pun that he makes becomes reality.
Oh my God.
So it's something along the lines of, wow, that professor sure has a stick up her ass.
And then,
Ouch.
oh my God,
Or, man, your girlfriend's a pile of
just turns into a pile of shit.
Yeah.
So, what happens in this casting call?
I don't know. That's all I know about it, except the name of the superhero is Scarf Man. And so I show up with my 12-foot Doctor Who scarf, just basically expecting to get the role.
Nice.
That'll win that'll win them over. Yeah.
At least it shows them that I'm enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. I actually met on Tuesday. I didn't tell you guys, on Tuesday I went to the first meeting of something called Swingin' Jacks. It's the swing dance society, so to speak, where you sort of, when I say you sort of learn how to swing dance, there are people there who already know, but they teach you. So I've only had one lesson, and since it's a good way to socialize, since you have to dance with women and meet women too. And I was talking to this one girl, and she had a shirt that said what's the thing, like keep calm, and it was like keep calm and
don't blink.
No, but her said keep calm and regenerate, I think is what it said.
Nice.
So I kind of got in a conversation, and she asks, do you watch it? And I said occasionally. And she was like, how the hell do you watch it occasionally?
I know, right? You're weird, Tom.
I know, I am weird. And she was saying that, she has seen, she's gone to like bookstores or something like that, like Hastings, and they have, like remote controlled Daleks or like Dalek Pez dispensers, and she cries when she sees them. And, she wants a scarf, just like the ones that they have. And I'm like, well, just make sure you don't get one, because she was kind of little, so I was like, well, don't get one like my friend Garrett, who's a 12-foot one. You'll trip every time you walk, or something like that. And I did pass along that we do the show, and I said, if you ever want us to tell us what you like, if you have input, because we have faces for radio, we don't do a video show. And she was like, oh, I definitely have a face for radio. And I sent her a link, and she said all I've heard so far is she said she listened to the first episode, but it was, quote, quite nice. So,
yay.
Good hopes there. So, all right. So speaking of the show, are we all back? Are we all ready?
Yep.
Okay.
Playing with some marbles.
All right.
On my blanket with a bunch of birds on it.
All right. So I'll bring us back in.
Marbles.
That needs to go at the very beginning.
Yes. And,
This box set has marbles in it.
and so at first you weren't enthusiastic about the marbles, but now that you hold them in your hands, you know, it changes the experience. All right.
It's
So.
like since they're clear, when you look through them, like things are reflected weirdly. It looks like the sort of psychedelic imagery that would very like the weird sort of like illusions that are very Pink Floyd art.
Beautifully said.
Yes. Greatly said. All right. So with that, I'll.
So fun. These marbles are. At first, I was like, "Why are they clear?" But now I'm like, they are very fun to look at.
Yeah.
Like you hold them up to your eyes, and it's like.
Becca, stop gushing about the marbles. Let's record.
Yeah. You hold them. Sorry.
There's another thing I need to gush about.
Sorry.
The keyboards in this album are phenomenal. This is my area of comfort.
Yeah, sorry. I have to complete that sentence when you said you hold them up to your eye and you're like, I can see right through them. Okay, so that was a bad joke. Let's move on. All right, so I'll bring us in.